Alright, good morning to everyone. Hope all is well with you. In case you haven't met me before or you're new to the channel, I love JJK, and that's why most of my videos are about the series. So, if you're new, welcome to the channel, or I guess welcome to JJKTube, if you will. If that's up your alley, consider subscribing, because your boy's got a lot more JJK coming down the pipe. I'll also be covering a few other topics, mixing it up a little bit here and there. I think my next video is going to be on Chainsaw Man. I'm also, I like to incorporate Dragon Ball, Naruto. Unfortunately, eventually I'm going to have to do Bleach. I don't think I can get around that. But yeah, no, long intros aside. Today we're looking at how Yuji has managed to take complete control of his body and why he's actually the perfect prison for Sukuna. Now, when we talk about this, we kind of have to start at the first time Yuji eats a Sukuna finger. He's transformed very briefly, and this is likely due to his lack of understanding for the Jujutsu world as a whole, let alone the nuances of controlling his own cursed energy, and he knows even less about how to win a power struggle with Sukuna as his new vessel. Now, despite this, he reclaims his body pretty quickly without even understanding really what's going on. Now, why would this be, you ask? Well, this is actually pretty easy to figure out. Yuji is inherently stronger than this Sukuna. Now, that sounds like a pretty crazy statement, and if you don't know the full context here and you haven't overanalyzed it like I have, 8 times rereading the series, it definitely could seem crazy, but it's not. Sukuna is severely nerfed, more than you would think. He's well below the level most people put him at this point, which is 1/20th of his full power. People put him here because of a common misconception that Sukuna's full power is spread evenly among all the fingers. However, this is not the case. In fact, we have statements indicating the exact opposite. Most notably that Sukuna cannot achieve his full power so long as he is inside of Yuji, meaning that even if Yuji ate all 20 of Sukuna's fingers, we would not see full power, prime, Black Air Force energy Sukuna from back in his glory days. And what that indicates to me is that the fingers themselves are not the key to either reviving Sukuna or even getting him back to his full power. This means that his first appearance is not Sukuna at 1/20th his full strength, but instead even weaker. And the fact that he is inhabiting Yuji's body as a vessel seems to be a pretty significant nerf, and a nerf that disallows him from even overpowering an inexperienced Yuji's will with raw power. And this makes sense. As we know by this point in the story, Yuji was literally bred to be powerful and a good vessel for Sukuna. We know this because we find out Kinjaku is Yuji's mom, dad, something. The point is that Kinjaku basically made the cursed children for specific reasons with Yuji, at least. We don't know if it was the same case for all of them, but at least with Yuji, he made Yuji to be the vessel of Sukuna. And I'm going to go further in depth on this in a different video, but the short version is that Kinjaku wants Sukuna as part of his plan, whether that be to work with him or to use Uzumaki to absorb his powers. I actually think the second is far more likely because Kinjaku's a little power hungry and he doesn't seem to be much of a team player. In fact, he took the strongest, most helpful person on his team and just sucked him into Uzumaki to use him for later. So I'd imagine that's actually what he plans to do once he has a close or at least 20-finger version of Sukuna. So, now, even further than this, it makes all the sense that Yuji should be able to contain Sukuna when we start thinking about it like this, because that means that he was made to be a prison for him, and it makes sense that he has insane potential to overpower and extremely nerf Sukuna, even if he's unaware of how to use it. So, in fact, just as a side note, current Yuji would embarrass the versions of Sukuna that we saw fight Gojo, Megami, Finger Bear, as current Yuji is more powerful than Jogo and distorted Mahito, and these two obviously outscale 1, 2, and 3 finger Sukuna. But no luck. Why didn't Yuji take his body back to stop Sukuna from killing Megami and attacking the city during the Shibuya incident? Well, I'm glad you asked. As many of you know, your power and cursed energy fluctuate depending on your mindset and resolve. During the first instance of Sukuna appearing and briefly taking control of Yuji's body, there was nothing wrong with his mentality, with his mindset. Even though his grandfather died, we see in that same chapter he's rather jovial, making jokes, kind of packing up his grandpa again, even after he's dead, talking about how he's gonna burn him to see how he feels. That was interesting. But during these first little pop-ups, Yuji's in his right mind, for lack of a better term. His resolve's not broken, and that's why we see he's able to take control back from Sukuna so easily. However, when he fights the Finger Bearer, this is not the case. In fact, with the Finger Bearer, we saw him essentially have a mental breakdown. And this is something Sukuna kind of packs him up for. He's even mocking him when he's telling Megami what happened, saying that Yuji was breaking down and was soft, like most other humans. And this sort of thing is actually noticed by Sukuna. He's actually quite perceptive. He's not just being dishonest or making fun of people. Sukuna actually seems to understand, after the first 2 switches between him and Yuji, that he is subject to Yuji's ability to take his body back. And right after he takes out the Finger Bearer, he expects Yuji to exercise this again and take his body back. And unfortunately, Sukuna at one point realizes, oh, he actually can't right now. He cannot force me to switch bodies back. Which, very plain, if Yuji was able to do it, he would have saved Megami, he would have stopped Sukuna from ripping out his heart, and he just couldn't. This is because throughout most of this incident, his mentality is obviously broken down. Please refer back to the original mental breakdown that he had. And then, obviously, when Megami speaks to him and Yuji can hear Megami's little speech, he's able to get his resolve back and immediately switches back to having control over his body. Direct correlation between his mental state, his mental standing, and his resolve, and how much control he actually has there. Now, moving past this, when we look at the when we look at the Shibuya incident, Yuji goes into this arc in not a great place. He's actually still struggling to cope with his decisions during the Cursed Womb fight, and his resolve and state of mind continue to degrade throughout most of this. On top of that, he's force-fed 10 of Sukuna's fingers at once, and in this case, it's the combination of these two things, his low resolve, Sukuna getting an amp, a crazy amp, essentially having 3 times the amount of fingers he originally did. This combination is enough to allow Sukuna to control Yuji's body at will. And in this case, this is still quite an advantage that Sukuna needs to be able to take over his body for a very brief time. It seems to be about 20-30 minutes tops, because he fights twice and switches back. And the consistent theme here is that, again, when Yuji's resolve is weakened, that's when Sukuna can actually control his body. At no other point do we see Sukuna even have a prayer of taking over the vessel or even harming Yuji in any significant way. Again, this would demonstrate that without Yuji getting mental nerfs and being much weaker than he should be as the vessel of Sukuna, Sukuna has no hope of controlling the body. Therefore, Yuji is actually in control here. And then, to further prove this, Yuji has found his resolve by the end of the Mahito fight. At this point in the story, he has such complete control over Sukuna that Mahito is safe to approach Sukuna's soul. And he even remembers that originally Yuji didn't have this level of restraint on Sukuna, because as most of you know, the first time Mahito approached his soul, or the second time actually, he was almost killed instantly. And when Yuji is at this current level of resolve, Mahito is safe to, you know, even talk his shit. He comes up on Sukuna's soul and says, yeah, what are you gonna do? He knew it. He knew in a way that he could not be touched while Yuji was in control, to the extent that he was anyway. So all of that being said, this all points to Yuji is perfectly capable of controlling Sukuna at this point, as long as his mental state does not degrade, even if he were to eat 20 fingers. Right now, obviously, at 15 fingers, and it's still not anything close to being enough to overpower Yuji's will and take over the vessel. So all of this just points to Yuji just being a vessel that is too powerful a cage, even for the King of Curses. But yeah, all that being said, guys, I think that's all I wanted to say about this particular topic. I think my next video is going to be on Chainsaw Man, but we'll be back on the JJK grind right after that. We're gonna be putting out a lot more videos moving forward, as you guys might have been able to tell. You know, if you have anything you want to see specifically, feel free to leave me comments. I try to respond to everybody. I don't always get to, but I'll probably at least see it. If you enjoy these, you know, feel free to drop a like, or subscribe, keep up with me. I promise you I'll be making sure to drop bangers in your YouTube feed as often as humanly possible. But yeah, peace out.